All right, let's hope the sound's right and everything for this. But g'day guys, I just want to quickly go over 3ds Max and its tools. I'm saying quickly, but it won't be that quickly because we're going to go over a few things. Okay, so there's kind of like what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 sections, right? So up the top, you've got your toolbar, and it's all in words for you. So you've got those up the top. Then you've got your tools underneath there. You've got a selection area over here. Okay. You've got your 4 panels in here where you view in 3D space. So we're talking about 3D space for that. And we've got our command panel area over here. This is one that you use the most, and this is where we make things. And we're going to have a look at that shortly. We've also got our animation area down here, and it's got a time slider and stuff down here. And this is where we make keys for animation. And then you've got your viewport viewing and panning and those sort of things down in here. Okay, so I'm going to start basically showing you how this thing works so you understand. I'll go through every one of these tools very quickly, but for the moment, just so we just jump straight into it, I'm going to create something. All right, so let's have a look at the create panels that we've got, or the panels that we've got. We've got a top, we've got a front, we've got a left, and we've got a perspective, which is like a couple angles looking at a different perspective. Okay, now they can be changed, and if whichever one you're working in, you'll see a yellow line. So if you click, just left click in a box, you'll see a yellow, or sort of a yellow colored line that goes around that area. Okay, right, cool. So at this stage, we've got nothing in here. You'll also will see that each one of these has some kind of information up the top. So for the top view, it says it's standard. So it's a standard and it's in wireframe. So what does standard and wireframe mean? Well, we'll see in a moment. I'm first going to create something in the perspective view. And we're going to learn about these tools as we go along. So I'm going to do something which is simple. I'm going to create a sphere. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to create a sphere. I still need to go through all this stuff with you, but let's just have a look at a sphere. So when I click on sphere, I have all these parameters come up down in here. I'm just going to ignore them for now, and I'm going to create a sphere. I'm going to put it just over here. It doesn't matter. So as you can see, I've got a sphere, and this sphere in the perspective view has a default shading going on. You see where it says default shading up the top there? It's got default shading, right? And if you look at the sphere in all these different areas here, you can see that they're wireframe. I can change all that if I want to. This is default setting. And I can easily do that by just going up into, well, I'll show you. Okay, first of all, I'm just going to escape because I've created that and I just want to escape out of it. So I press escape so it's not still there. And if you have a look up there, it's got top, it's got standard. Well, standard is the shading that would be on it if it wasn't in wireframe, okay? It's also got wireframe. If I click on the wireframe, you can see that I can change that to become default shading, for instance. And I'm just going to do that to show you, right? In this view, I'm going to click on default shading, and now you see, now I'm using my middle mouse spinner to, if I hold down my middle mouse spinner, I get the pan there, right? And if I roll the spinner, I can zoom in and out. It's pretty simple, okay? At this stage, you saw me change it from wireframe to default shading. I'm going to click off the default shading again, and I'm going to go to the wireframe override here. So it shows me the wireframe. If you have a look further with that whole stuff, you'll see that I can actually do a lot more than just that. I can put different types of default shading on it and all sorts of different things, but I can change the view if I wanted to. It's very simple to do that too. There is shortcuts to do these things, but if I click in there where it says top, you can see that I can change it to perspective view, which is like this one. I can change it to, top, bottom, left, right, back, left, right, etc. So I can change all these things. There's a lot of shortcuts in here, and I'm not going to over confuse you, but it's very simple. Once you've actually activated that view, you can just hit the shortcut. For instance, I can go hit L, okay, and it goes straight to left. If I hit back to T, it goes straight to top. Okay. Right. So I'm going to just want to talk to you about what's going on here. Can you see in my perspective view right here, okay, that I have a little kind of some red lines showing Y, X, and Z. Okay, so that is what we're doing. We're working in 3D space. So if you look at that, goes out the back that way, X goes that way, and Z goes up the top, right? So we're talking about length, width, and depth type of thing. So we're in 3D space. Okay, so that's a little bit about how we can change the views and what we're looking at. I don't know if you've actually had a little play with that, but the way I created that sphere is I have to go through all that with you as well. So no stress about it. What I wanted to first tell you is that I want you to learn these move tools and stuff and learn the shortcuts for the move tools. So right now, I know that I can, if I hold my little middle mouse button down, I get the pan button and I can pan around. I'm not moving the sphere, I'm panning the view, right? Because you can see, if you have a look there, there's a grid, and you see where that black part of the grid, the line crossover, that's what we call 0, 0 coordinates, 0, 0, 0 coordinates. It's the middle of the world, basically. So this is just the beginning, and we're just going to learn how to move things around a little bit. So if we look up here, we have this arrow up in your tools up here. We have this guy here, which is called, if you hover over anything in 3ds Max, you will get a little blurb about it. Like most programs today, it tells you what the shortcut is for it and what the tool is, and it also will give you some more information if you want to learn a little bit about it. So it's a good way of learning about the stuff. But that tool there that's got the 4 arrows crossed like that, that's the move tool, select and move tool. That's probably the most important one of all. Okay, now, if you hover over it, what's the shortcut? What's the shortcut for the move tool? Thank you. So you need to learn these ones, okay, for the shortcuts. You need to make sure you remember in your head what the shortcuts are, and the Q, W, E are the most important, and the T. So if we go to Q, okay, you'll notice that this guy is select object. So what that is, it gives you, it lets you select objects. Let's have a look what it says. Okay. You select objects or sub-objects for manipulation. So it lets you actually select objects from over here. You can select them in a list if you need to. Yeah. This next one, or it's just a selection. It's not a select and move. Okay. This next one across here, which is H, which is one that we're going to learn about the QWERT at the moment. That's select by name. So I can use that one and select it out of here by name, right? So if I go like that, a little floating one comes up and it tells me that there's a sphere 001 is in there, and I can select that like that and go okay. All right, but let's go back to the real ones that we use. Press W, and you see that the select and move tool has been selected, and you will see that this guy here, that Gizmo, because I'm using this right now, has got a color coding going on it too. So this Gizmo is kind of cool, and it works like this. I also want to show you, while I show you this, you see my view, my perspective view here. I want that to be just the full thing so you can see it up closer. And the way of making that the full view, there's a shortcut to do it as well. But if you go right down into the right-hand corner, you'll see Alt plus W is the shortcut. But this little arrow in the corner will do this. Once I've selected the panel, it will do that. Okay, so it brings up just that one selection. So this is where we're going to play with this tool. So I've got the move tool selected, the W, and with that, I can do this, right? So this is everything that you move around or you rotate has a little gizmo. So if you look at this guy, if I put my little crosshair move tool over the W here, okay, over the W, I can, and then hold down your left mouse button, I can click this and move that in that direction. You see that? So have a go at doing that. Grabbing that guy and moving it like so. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, and I was saying W is the shortcut for the move tool, but this is the gizmo. So if I click on the red bit there and hold it down, I can move it in that direction. Same with the Y. If I click that, it's green, the green one. I'll move it in that direction. Okay. If I click the Z, that's the up and down. Yeah, up and down. Okay. I can also share between those. So you see how, if you look at your gizmo, you'll see that it's got, if I hover in those little areas there, it becomes yellow. So this one here, for instance, the Z and the X, right, axis is what it is. I can now, if I hover in that yellow and click down with my left button, I get this. I can move in both those directions at the same time. So please have a go at that. If I go there, the Z and the Y, or the Y and the Z, and I hover in that little box there, I can move in that area too. Okay. If I hover in the one that's sitting in there, sharing the Y and the Z, that's in that area. It's not going to go down in this, the Y and the X. It's not going to go down in the Z axis. It's just going to stay in that area. So that's how you use your move tool, your little gizmo for just select and move. Right. So I'm going to go back to my views. Okay. And I want you to, I just take note of this, right? Right now, this sphere, and whichever one I select to move it around, it's not sitting at 0, 0, 0 coordinates, which would be in the point right in the middle here, right in the middle there, right in the middle there, and right over here. How do I put this to 0, 0, 0 coordinates? Well, using the move tool, select and move tool, it's not hard to do. I can either right click it No, I won't right click it, sorry. I can do a couple of things. I can right click the actual move tool up here, right? The move tool itself up here. And see where it says absolute world and offset screen? You don't need to think about this one. But X, Y, and Z, it's telling me where it is in 3D space. So it's minus 98 something from the X, Y, and the Z. But I want to zero that all in. So I can either do it like this. There's a shortcut to do this too, but I'm going to do it manually. So I'm just going to swipe this, and I'm going to put 0. I'm going to swipe this, and you see that it's moved it over to there. I'm going to put 0. Oops. Swipe that, I'm going to put 0. And I swipe this guy, and I'm going to put 0. So right now, that sphere, I'm going to click that little thing off. That sphere is right in the middle of the, as you see where the point is? This little gizmo is actually sitting in the middle of the sphere. Okay? So that's how you can get it to reset itself in 0, 0, 0 coordinates. Okay. So that's that one. Okay, so the next tool I want to talk about is the next one along, which is your rotate tool. Okay, so I'm going to just use the one of these guys here for the moment. So rotate. Okay, select and rotate. Now in this case, you're not going to see what I'm doing in here because it's got a default shading over the top of the wireframe. So what I often do is see where it says standard. Okay, you can see that it's got the standard shading. We're in the perspective view, and then it's got default shading here. But I want to put wireframes over the top of it. I don't want to wireframe override it. I just want to be able to see. I don't mind seeing a bit of this default shading, but if you go into default shading and you go edged faces, and you click on that, it's now giving me the different little squares or whatever you'd like to call them for now. And I'll explain to you about that shortly. Because the idea with Max is that we're just looking at one shape, but all those little squares can be manipulated and extruded and all this, but we have to turn it into something before we get there. So the gizmo works the same way as the move tool. So this little thing, you'll see that it's got X, Y, and Z still sitting in there. I'll just bring this right up so you can see it. And if you hover over onto like the yellow line here, okay, you can see if I hover over that, you'll get my little, and I click left click and hold that button down, I can start to rotate that in that direction. And you even get a little bit of a the coordinates floating above that. Can you see that? So you can see I'm hovering over that little one there. So this is rotating something. You'll see why we use these sort of tools at the moment. So if you look down here, Max has a lot of places that repeat themselves. So there's different ways of doing things, but it repeats itself in different areas, right? You saw when I did the move tool and I right clicked it, I got this rotate transform type and it gave me this, and I zeroed that with the move tool. It's the same thing. You can right click the button and get that there too to get the coordinates. But also you have a live view coordinates down here. See up down here, guys? See down here? So in actual fact, I can get the spinners in there, right? What's happening? And I can change the coordinates of that down in there too. X, Y, and Z, right? I can do it that way. I'm just using my gizmo for now. Again, I can do it this way. You see, I can move it on the yellow line, which goes in the X axis. And I've got the green one, which goes in the Y axis. Okay, so you understand what's going on here? Now, if I want to just reset that back to where it was, I can either right-click this spinner up here, but I can actually right-click the tool up here, but I can actually go into here and change it around too. Now, a little handy thing to know with 3ds Max is those little, what we call spinners, with those little arrows in the corners there. If you right-click that spinner itself and right-click on your mouse, what does it do? So I'm going to right-click the spinners in here, right? What it does, it zeros for you. So anything that you use that's like this, like a spinner in Max, if you right-click it, it will zero back to where it's supposed to be. While I'm here, I also want to show you that if I go back to the select and move, so you see the gizmo, and I go back to my 4 views, you see that that gizmo is sitting in the middle of this sphere. If you look here, it's in the middle, it's in the middle here, it's in the middle here, and the middle in every view. So that's where the axis of the sphere, that's the center point. Okay. Now you can change that. There's ways of doing that, and we'll learn about that as we go along. But that's where this is going to be. It's going to be at 0, 0, 0 from the middle of its axis. Okay. All right. Now I haven't gone through all these tools here because I just want to set you off so you can understand how to navigate and create things from the Create panel over here. All right. Now I've got it selected. That's cool. We've learned about the rotation tool here that rotates it like so. Okay. Same with anything. You can actually go back in the arrows here, or you can go Control Z to go back 1 step. So you can go forward and back in steps up here in these arrows. Okay, just like in Photoshop or any of those, you can go do that. All right. So how do we just delete this for the moment? That's okay. Won't do it yet though. There's one more tool I want to show you. So the W is the select and move tool, most important. The E is your rotation tool, most important. The R, okay, the R is your scale tool. Now every one of these tools have a little bit more options. If you see there's a little tiny point, a little triangle in the corner of the right hand bottom corner. A lot of these tools have different options, but for now, just go with the select and uniform scale option. So now we've got another gizmo, haven't we? This time we've got, oops, I'm in that one. I didn't want to go to that guy. I wanted to go to the perspective. Okay. So I had to activate that one, seeing the yellow line, and so I blew this one up so you guys can see. Now, the scale tool will be interesting because you see, we have a triangular type of scale gizmo this time. So if I hit in the middle where it's all lit up, that will be uniformly scaling it. So if I click my left button and hold it down and go forward or backwards, I'm actually scaling this cube down, not my view, the cube itself. Now, here's where it can be a little bit funny and tricky, is if I share my scaling, okay? If I share my scaling, you can see if I share the X and the Y, look what's going on. I'll zoom out so you can see it. I've just turned my sphere into a flying saucer kind of thing, yeah? I'm going to Control Z back that so it goes back to where I started. And I want you to just have a little play with the different scales. If I go share between the Z and the Y, I'm getting this really weird looking shape. If I go to this guy, I'm getting that shape. So the scale tool can do a fair bit of stuff like that. Okay, so I've Control Z back to just show you that. Again, if I if I hit that little corner and hold it down, I've got different options of scaling, different types of thing. Like that last one is squash and squish. That's a different type of scaling, it just in two axes, and you can do different things. And believe me, you use these things quite a lot. So really, the main buttons are select and move, rotate, and scale. Okay, and so so we're just learning the basics of moving around. So we know that the move tool is W, the rotate tool is E, and if you hover out over any of those things, and the scale and uniform tool is R, and if you hover over any of those, you can see the information. Now, I've skipped a lot of this other stuff because we're just going straight in to create stuff, and that's how we're going to go from now. So with our sphere, as we've seen, we can see that we have our scale tool here. It's still sitting on the scale tool. I'm just going to hit my W, so I deselect that again. And I've got my X, Y, and Z little gizmo, as we call it. And remember that, again, W is the move and select and move. E is the select and rotate. And R is the scale tool. Okay, so I'm going back into this guy here. So that's all right, we've learned all about that. Now I'm also in the one view, and I've been using this little guy down here, right in the corner. But if you hover over that, it also says Alt plus W. So that's the shortcut, Alt and W, to actually go from one view to the other. So if I hit Alt and W, it's gone back to the 4 views. Okay. Now, just hiding over in the corner while we're looking at those views, just over here, as you saw before, you can move panels around. So I'm just going to open this a little bit over here on your left-hand side. Okay, and it's not going to move because it's jammed up like that. But you'll see that there's a little there's little viewports down here. You see a little arrow, and you'll see you have different types of viewports that you can layouts that you can see. So some people prefer to see, for instance, this one, okay, which has the 3 different views down here. It's the top, the front, the left, and your perspective view is here. So you can change those around to whatever suits you. I personally just like the good old-fashioned quad 4, which is this guy here. But you have a number of them if you hit the little arrow to change, including the full-sized view of one of the viewports as well. Up to you what you like to use. So you can change your viewports all the time. So we've learned a little bit about the basic move and rotate and stuff, and we created the sphere, but I jumped straight into the sphere without explaining to you what I can do with this sphere, had I created that sphere. But before I go to this next one, I want to show you a shortcut little thing in between. Okay, so another thing we need to know too is that in my perspective view, there's a few shortcuts to see what angle I'm looking at this guy. All right, so in your little corners, there's a little box. So if you have a look at the box over here, you can hardly see it, and you can scale these things all up. But I've got like this, if I hover over in my little box, I can hit, for instance, front. I can only just see it, and it says front. And you see what happened? It moved it to the front view. If I want to go to in between, I hover, I can move it around like that, those little arrows, and I can move them around like that. And that's okay if you want to use this to view your object in different ways. That's cool. If I click and hold it, you can see I can see what's going on. If I click and hold my little box in the corner, I can move it around to whatever. Yeah? Okay. So that's one way that you can move around and look at stuff. The other way, of course, is the shortcut way, which is the way you should really learn about. And that is, remember that if I hold down my little mouse in the middle, you can see I can pan it around and hold it with the pan view. If I hit Alt, I can spin it around like so. By holding Alt and the middle mouse button, I can move it around like that. Yeah? So I can move it to any angle, look at it from underneath, above, whatever. By holding down Alt and the middle mouse button, I can move it around. Okay, so there's a lot of different little things you can do. If I just hold down my left left button, it's got the move tool happening at the moment. I can move it around as well, like so. So yes, all right, so you can move these guys around. So another way of moving things around, besides the shortcuts on the keyboard, are these down here in the right-hand corner. So again, I can click on the pan, click on the hand, and I get the pan. If I wanted to scale it up and down, zoom in and out, I can hit that guy, and I can zoom in and out like that too. If I want to change the field of view, I can hit the eye, right? And the field of view also changes, a bit like scaling, but it's not quite scaling. It's the field of view you're looking at. So any of those things that you use, you can use these to navigate around. There's also an orbit sub-object, and there's a couple other ones, zoom extensor selected, and zoom all. So we're only looking at one object at this stage. I'm just going to hit my W to just go back to my select and move. So there's a number of ways to navigate around with the views and to move your object around. So that's one little quick thing I wanted to show you. The other thing is one of the things that Max does is really cool. Is if I wanted to, and I'll just hit my little button up here so you can just see the one object. I want to copy this guy. I want to make another copy of him. Okay, so if you move anything and if you hold down Shift, it will make a copy for you. So watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to copy this over on the X axis. I'm going to hold down Shift and I'm going to move this guy across like this. Okay, and as soon as I let go, it's going to ask me, do you want a copy or an instance or a reference? So let's just talk about that quickly. If I make a copy, that's a new copy. If I make an instance, that's almost like a clone, okay? So I can say to it, I want one, and I go, okay, and now I have two objects. I've got one called Spiro1, and I've got one called Spiro2, okay? 3ds Max have named them automatically by default. That's cool. If I go Control Z back, I have to go back all the way to there. And I do the same thing again. And so if I go down to Shift and I move it to the right, comes up with this and it says a number of copies. I've got copy selected. Let's say if I said, I'll just give 4 for an example and go OK. Look what it's done. It's made me 4 straight out like that. Okay, so you can make straight away make an array of the object, what we call an array. I can even cheat on that one and go, all right, I've got to get my select tool. So that's the other thing up here is select tools. Okay, and you've got different types of areas that you can select, different shapes. If I go to the good old rectangle and I select all those 5 spheres, okay, and then I copy them, let's copy them down, hold down Shift and I go on the Z and push them down. I now have made 5 copies. I could go in here and put down a whole heap more, but I've made 5 complete copies of that sphere. So all of a sudden, I've got 10 spheres. So anything that you hold down Shift and move, you've got the options to make copies of that. That's that simple. And you can make it in whichever axis you want to go to, but that's how you make copies and stuff. So I'm just going to control back to my sphere. Now, what does zoom extents all do? Let's say my sphere is sitting over here like this in the corner. You see what's going on? If I hit this zoom extended extents selected, see what happens here. You see this little guy? If I click and hold that and select that first one, it brings it right up to me. I'll do that again so you can see. I'll go back. Oh, it's not going to go back. I'll go back like that again, and I go to that third one along. I click that, and I select that first one there. It zooms and extends everything straight up for you like that. You see that? Because you can get really confused in space, in 3D space. All right, so without getting too confused, we're going to start to learn how to create these things. So how do I get rid of this guy? Well, make sure you've got it selected and hit delete. Okay, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to hit delete. Okay, so I'll go back to the 4 views because we're going to start to make some more things. So how do we make objects? And again, it's just starting from the start. So I'm going to go up to the create panel. So this is the create panel. And if you have a look up here, there's sort of like 6 different sections. This is create panel, which is this plus thing here. If you hover over it, it says create. The next one along, okay, is your modifier panel. Okay, I'm sorry, it's not it's your modifier panel. Yes, it is. The next one along is your hierarchy, and I'll talk to you about what that means later on. The next one along is your motion panel. The next one is your display, and the next one's utilities. The most important one we're going to be using is the create panel, although you'll know how to use the rest of them as well in the future. So at the moment we're creating. So what can we create? Well, we can create geometry. We can create splines. Now that's an interesting one. I'll talk about that as we get there. We can create lights because we need to light up our area to see what we've got in the area, and when we render things out, it has to have lighting in it. Max has actually two lights already in here that you can't see. We wouldn't be able to see our object if they didn't have those lights in there. Okay, so it's like real world in some ways. The next part of the create panel is cameras. So we can make cameras to film, right? Or to collect images of your animations, for instance. The cameras are cool because they're just like real world cameras. You get all sorts of different types, and they're virtual cameras. So you can animate a camera as well as film something being animated. All right, so it's pretty cool. The next one is called, I think it's helpers, and helpers have all sorts of things that help you do stuff, which we'll learn about. The next one is forces. This is interesting because this is space warps. This does all kind of special effects like wind and things like that. You know, we're getting out of our range for right now. And the next one is systems. So there's bipeds and bone systems, which I'll show you a bit later on today, which is kind of cool too. Go back to your create panel, which is the first one. And we've got a number of things here that are by default in 3ds Max. And we'll start off with them. If you think this is all we can create as far as shapes and primitives are, just have a look where it says standard primitives. Have a look at, click the down arrow or the thingy. You'll see you've got all these things you can create as well. special effects like fluids, point cloud objects, particle systems, compound objects, extended primitives, standard primitives. We're going to stick with standard primitives because we're learning about the basics at this stage. So we started off with a sphere. I've set the perspective view to show edged faces. Make sure you've done that too because it shows you what you're doing. So remember, if you go into where it says click on in there, and if it says default shading there, you need to tick edged faces as well so you can see the edge faces. So before we get into doing edit polys and stuff, we're going to just learn about creating normal stuff, right? So how do you create a box? Of course, you can create them in any view you want. I'm using the perspective view as an example for now, so you can see how it's going. So I hit box. Now, when I've done that, it says it's got all these parameters down here. It's saying length, width, height, length segments, width segments, height segments, etc. I'm just going with the default for now. You can actually change this now, and you could change it after the fact. I'm just going to go the easy way for now so we understand. So how do I create a box? I clicked on box. It's 3 kind of movements, or 2 for this one. I click, I'm going to drag the base of the box out first, right? So watch what I do. Okay, I'm going to click, hold down my left button, and I'm going to drag out the base of the box like that. Okay, you can go any size you want, any direction, it doesn't matter. Then I'm going to let go of my left mouse button, and I'm going to push up. I've got no buttons clicked, I'm just holding my mouse, using my mouse, and I'm going to push away from me, and I get the height of my box. Yeah? Have you done that, guys? Cool. How about you, Peter? All right? You're doing it, aren't you? You're not doing something else? Okay, cool. So you can see that it's very simple to create a box. Now, at this stage, I can come in here because I haven't clicked off this box. I can come in here and I could give this, say, a length and width as. What I'd like you to do is go in here, swipe the first length, and whatever it's got in there, put 50. Okay? Hit enter to make it happen if you want to, and you'll see that now the length of the box is 50. Now I'm going to go to the next one underneath, and I'm going to say the width of the box is 50. Hit enter. Once you click another button, that will enter it for you, but I'm just doing it for the sake of it. And now I'm going to hit the height of the box 50 and hit enter. So basically now, I'll get my view out, I have a 50 unit by 50 unit by 50 unit square cube. All right. Remember, if I click off that box, these parameters will disappear and I'll have to go into the modifier panel to get them back. And I'll show you how that happens in a second. So how many segments do I have on each side of my box? Well, it's saying it right here, I have 1. What I'd like you to do as an exercise is to change them to 4 and see what happens. Remember, I've got edge faces on here. So if I hit 4, and I click the next one, I now am breaking it into 4 different segments. So each side has 4 segments. Okay, so we're getting towards a Rubik cube kind of looking thing. And you see I've got 12 segments on each side. 4 across, 4 down, and 4 up the top. Okay, have you managed to do that, guys? All good? Fantastic. Okay, that's cool. For now, that's good. Now we can scale this up. We can do all that kind of stuff as you saw before. But for the purpose of the exercise, I'm going to actually click on a space somewhere else. I'm going to click away from it over here in gray space. So I've deselected it, right? Deselected. I'm going to go up to here first, and I'm going to click over there. I've absolutely deselected. I've done my move tool and I've deselected it. I haven't got it in selection. So I click back onto it again, and here's the where the parameters was. You'll see there's nothing there. That's because I now need to go to what we call the Modifier Panel. I'm going to go to the Modifier Panel. So that's your geometry. The next one along is called your Modifier Panel, right? So if I click in there, sorry, that's your create thingy. So the next one along here is your Modifier Panel up the top here, sorry. I'll just do that again, okay? I've clicked off the box. I'm going to select it again, but I've got the Modifier Panel on here okay? You can't see anything in here, but when I go to the Modifier Panel, I actually went to the other panel accidentally then, but that's okay. It's been a while. So now I can get back into the parameters of this box again. And I can put more segments in it, for instance. I can make, put 6 in. I can modify it. I can put 6 in. I can put 6 in there. I can change the lengths to be whatever. The width to be whatever. I can modify all this guy. Okay? So this is just creating a shape at this stage, or as they call it, geometry. I'm going to click that off. Okay, so I'm selected and deselected it, so it's away. So it's nice and clean. I'm going to put the panel right up so we can see. And we're going to go through the rest of them, okay, for now. Next thing is a sphere. All right, so if I create a sphere, that's cool. I've still got it selected. So I can change the sphere. At this stage, as a default, it's got 32 segments. I'm going to change that to 64. What happens with that, and hit enter, is that the actual object becomes a bit more smoother too, right? Because it's got more graphics in it, it's got more information in it, so it becomes smoother. So I can change that. If I wanted to just do a hemisphere of it, I could actually come in here and hit the spinner. That's probably the best way you can see what's going on. I can hit this spinner, and what you see here is, see what's going on? I can go half a hemisphere. So I can go, what's half a hemisphere? 0.5 or 0.50. And now I've got half a hemisphere. And it's got an edges underneath it, and it's got all this business over here too. That's cool. All right, I'm going to go back to, I'm going to right click that to zero that back again, because it's just showing you what you can do. Now, I'll go into the front view, so you see it there perfectly in the front. What else can we do? Well, I can also do slice, for instance, or squash. I can do different things in here. I can go squash. I can go slice, right? And I can say slice from 0 to a certain part. So I can go slice from here. What am I getting? Okay, you can see I've got like a piece of, well, you can turn that into an orange or something, piece of orange or whatever you like to do. So I can get a part of a shape from this shape. Again, it's the same thing. If I click off this guy, if I click escape and I click off it, I don't see the modifier panel here. I don't see the modifications. If I click back onto it, they're still not here. I need to go to that next panel called the Modifier Panel while it's selected and click that guy there. And then I get these back again. All right. So I'm going to go back to my Create panel. I'm going to hit Delete. I'm going to go back to my 4 views. And then I'm going to go to the next one, which is the cylinder. And how do you create the cylinder? So I'm starting my creations all in the perspective view so you can see them. So what's a cylinder? Well, a cylinder, there's also about 3 steps to this one. I first will put out the base of the cylinder. So I go like this. For this moment, we'll just say it's a whatever size, something like that. I let go and I push forward, and I get a cylinder in a different shape. Again, it's on the default segments and everything. Yep, default segments are there. And I can change all that as well. I can change slices, and I can slice that as well. I can put, at this stage, you can see that the segments, what do we got? We've got 5 height segments of 5. We've got a cap segment of 1. All right, and we've got sides. There's 18 sides right around. You can change all that with the spinners here. You can change it to, it turns into a triangular shape. You can change, putting a whole heap of them in there. You can put less. You could put more cap segments up the top. See how the cap segments was 1? Now it's 5. Okay, so I can change that up and down. I can do all those sort of things. I can use the slice tool as well, and I can change the slicing from whatever I want. I could go, say, if you went, say, 90, you're going to get a quarter of it sliced up. You can see that in there. So, you know, it's all about mathematics if you think about it in there. So you can do that too. I'm just going to hit delete because I think that's enough on this, on the cylinder. So it's select W, delete. I'm just doing that to keep it nice and clean. We now have a torus. So what's a torus? Let's have a look. We've also got all sorts of different segments and radiuses and stuff. So to create a torus, you can click, right? And in this stage, I'm going to click and I'm going to drag away from me with the left mouse button down. And I've got a donut, basically. And then if I push up and down, I can get the different radiuses, radius 1 and radius 2. And you can see what's going on in your parameters there with this guy. So with the torus, I can actually change everything in here as well. I can put a twist in it if I want to, like so, which looks terrible. Okay. I can put more segments in it. I can put more sides in it. I can have a slice of it if I want to. I can change the radius of it from here with the spinner. So I can make it wider, the radius 1. Radius 2 is the inside. So I can make that, you know, fatter, for instance, like that. So you can do all sorts of things with that. Again, I'm going to hit my W for selection. I'm going to hit my delete tool to delete it. So what I mean by that is you've got a couple things to do. So I'm going to drag out the base of my tube. I'm going to let go and drag in the second radius, like so. And then I'm going to click, and then I'm going to drag away my mouse with nothing selected, and then I've got a tube. So now I've got a shape that's a bit like that. Yeah, it's a small tube. I can then change it again. I can go into my parameters and I can change the height. I can change the inner radius to be thicker or thinner. I can change the outer radius to be thicker or thinner as well. I can change the segments. I can do the slice on and off too if I want part of that tube. So if I was making some kind of component for something, I could make that almost exactly like that. Okay. So that's your tube. I wish I'd put my microphone on before, but that's okay. We'll just have to delete that area. Okay. You made a pyramid? Fantastic. So remember there's like 3 different levels for that one too. So you draw out your base. Okay. Okay. So if you've lost your grid, just hang on, I'll just create this first. If you've lost your grid, G, in the viewport that's showing, G should get rid of your grid, G should bring it back again. See that, man? You have to make sure that the perspective view is selected. and then it will show you. It's okay? Not quite. I'll come and show you in a second. So we've got a plane. That's a plane basically has no real depth to it. It's got a length and a width, but it's thin, right? There's nothing else there. It's just a plane. We use planes a lot to project images on, and we'll talk about all that stuff shortly. Again, you can do special things with this render multipliers here. So you can make a plane look like it's goes on for miles. So that's when you can use it to do things like create an ocean, for instance, that goes out into the distance. But we'll talk about that at a different stage. All right. So the next thing is, so you've done all of these objects. Oh, we didn't look at text plus. Text plus is basically text. I'm going to do this one in my front view. Text will make text for you, which you can extrude and stuff and use, right? So see text plus. If I write in here in the parameter, if I say, I'm going to write my name. Okay. And I click and say my front view. Bang. I've got my text. Okay. So it's got a certain amount of parameters on it already. I can turn that, I can extrude that out and make all sorts of things happen. I can extrude it out here in my parameters too. So if you look there, if I was spinning it out, my text, you can see it's now 3D type of text, yeah? Because I've got into my parameters and I've spun it out like that. We won't go into the text too much because there's more stuff to be done for now. So I'm just going to delete that text. And we're going to have a look in here. So what we've made so far, so we've gone into the standard primitives. Now when you drop down list at the top there, guys, have a look up here. See where it says standard primitive? Extended primitives. Click that guy. And now you've got all sorts of stuff here, okay? So if one of them is actually has an animation on it straight away. So let's quickly go through this one. I'm going to do the Hedgerow first. So that gives us different types of shapes. And if you have a look here, it's in family, it's got star 1 and 2. So I'm just going to click this one in the front view so you can see it. No, sorry. I'll click it. I'll go Control Z. I'll click it down here. So the first one's giving me a diamond shape. If I click down here and go cuba or octa, it's giving me that kind of shape. If I hit the next one along, it's giving me that shape. If I hit star, it gives me kind of a star. If I hit star 2, it gives me star with a bit more. Again, we have all sorts of, also when you're looking in here, you see how it's got more stuff down here? It straight away gives me a pan hand, so I can grab that and move it up and down like that. Sometimes you have so much information that you might want to do this. You can drag this out and you get 2 columns. See that? 2 columns there. 1, 2. So you can do the Hedgerow. Again, if I go to Chamfer Box, that's a pretty cool one. So it's a box with rounded edges. So if I do shape my box out like you would create the boxes before, and then I push up to get the height, and I click, and now I push down, I push further up, and I get to have smooth edges. So all of a sudden, I've made something that looks more like a suitcase or something. You see that? The fillets there? So you can change that one. The chamfer box has got those 3 things. I'll do it again. Yeah, that's right, a loaf of bread. That's exactly right. Now, if you put texture like a bread on texture on that, it will really look like a loaf of bread. So I'll do another one. and then I push back up, I can get it really smooth. It's almost could be some kind of space coffin or something. And so on. So I will get you guys, there's all sorts of chamfer cylinder, there's oil tank, a capsule, a spindle, all these different guys in here. So as in the class, I'll get you guys to just go through every one of those shapes, and then we'll have a break. So it's good to see you've had a little bit of play. You can see the different things you can make, like the capsule, for instance, is pretty simple. The capsule is basically, let me see, I'll do a quick one here. It makes the one side first. That's it. So your capsule is just left click and drag, and then you can push in or push down or the other way to make the capsule for the length, and there's your capsule. So we've gone through a few more these other extended primitives. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go to how do you make these things that you can change things yourself, like each one of these little 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 boxes that you see on the side of these things. So I'm just going to do this. I'm going to grab hold of everything. I'm going up to the selection, rectangular selection, and I'm just going to go like, oh no, I'm still making. You have to make sure you escape from the making. I'll go up to my selection, and I'm going to select all the, oh my God, here we go. It's a good start to the day. All right. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to deselect it by grabbing this guy. I'm going to grab this selection guy, and I'm just going to select all those guys, and I'm going to hit delete. So I've got back to a normal kind of thing going on. Sometimes when you get a bit of a mess, this is not a bad idea. I'll just put something back in there again, just so you got something. If you want to get rid of all the things in your scene and clean it up, if you go up to File and you go to Reset, right? Reset. And you say, do you want to save anything? No, I don't want to save. You really want to? No, I don't want to. So yes, it resets it back to what it default when you first opened it. So everything's back to normal again. So that's not a bad way to clear stuff up. So it's up in File, and you go Reset, and then you follow the prompts, and it say if you want to save it or if you don't, and do you really? And you go, yep. So now I'm going to show you how you can turn any of these objects. Before we go into splines and stuff, which is a different thing altogether, I'm going to show you how you can actually start working, say, on a box and changing the way it looks. So self-explanatory. Let me just do it so you can see what's going on. So if I click on box, and I'm going to make a box, just a little box in the middle here. Doesn't have to be any particular size. I'm going to give it, say, 4 segments on each side, just so it's got a bit of geometry. Okay. See, those segments don't really mean too much to anyone because they default shading. I'm going to put back on my edge faces. They don't really mean anything because there's not much I can do with those boxes at this stage, those little squares, as we could call them. But the power of 3ds Max is this. We have a menu that we call the quad menu. Now, I know I haven't been through all these tools and these things up here, but if you right-click if you've got it selected, if you right-click your object, right, this is what we call the quad menu. So it's like a really fast menu. And if you've got a number of things you can do, and it's broken into sort of 4 sections, so that's why it's called the quad menu. You can see you can freeze things and unhide things, but we're going to convert this to what we call, let me just show you, down the bottom it says convert to. Now, we've got a number of things that we can convert to. There's a mesh, editable mesh There's editable poly and editable patch and nerves. The main one that you'll be using most of the time, which is the common one, is editable poly. So each one of those boxes at this stage are just edges, face edges. But if I convert them to editable polygons, which is editable poly, so I click on that, all of a sudden I have something that I can really change stuff in. Okay, so I converted that, I right clicked it, I converted it, I went down there, right down to bottom here, and converted it to an editable poly. Now, each one of those boxes, as you see here, is now a polygon. I can do stuff with those. I can delete them, I can extrude them out, I can move them, I can change the shape of them, I can do all sorts of stuff. But once I've converted to an editable poly, if you look over on your Create panel, it's now telling me that this guy, so it's called a Modifier List here, and it's been converted to an editable poly. Okay, see this little box up the top? Okay, if you click that little arrow in that box, it gives you a whole heap of different things. Vertices, edges, borders, polygons, and elements. And if you look down here, these things in selection, okay, are exactly the same. We've got vertices, edges, borders, polygon, and elements. So what are they? Well, the best way to show you that is to have a look up close to this guy. So those points in there, those points on each point that meets up with the other polygon are called vertices. So if you click on the vertices, just click on that little one there. You can click here or you can click here. And you'll see that they've gone blue. Little tiny points. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 points to a box, yeah, or a editable poly. What can I do? Well, first of all, the first thing I'll do is I'll grab my select tool and I'll show you. I'm going to just quickly draw a selection over one polygon. I want to make sure I don't get another one from behind, which I might, but for this purpose of this, I just want to show you. I'm going to select that one. And see how it's gone red? And it's giving me a gizmo because I've got my select and move tool. If I select and move that polygon, what's it going to do? Let's have a look. Okay, now it's starting to look like you can do more stuff. I can move that vertices. So the vertices are very important. They're the points in the corners of your polygon. Okay, so these are now polygons. This is editable, which means editable polygon. Okay, so that's one thing. Now, if I go to, that's the points between, they're joined together between this one, that point there, or that vertex there, and this polygon here and this polygon share that vertex there. They're joined onto each other. They share it. That's why when I move it out, both the edges of that those two polygons come out. Okay. Right, so that's cool. Cool enough anyway. I'll just go back to there. What's the next thing in our little selection? Edges. Okay, so edges. Okay, if I go into edges, what do you reckon that could be? Well, the edges are the edges of the polygons. So there's, if I click on one, you see it goes red. And then again, I've got the same thing. I can grab that and I can push that out. And the other ones are following as well, if you have a look, right? Because they're stuck together. But I've grabbed hold of just that edge there and I could push them out like that. And it's affecting the other one as well because they're side by side. So that's edges. The next one is called borders. Now, borders is where there is a hole. So it's the border of a hole. I'll come back to that one and explain to you that in a second. But if I went to that, we don't have any holes in here that I could say, if that wasn't there, that surface of that polygon wasn't there in the middle, then that edge around here would be the border of it, okay? And I'll show an example in a second. So that's a border. The next one, which is the most important one, is the polygon face, okay? So if I click on that guy, you'll see if I click on any of these, I get the face of the polygon. Okay, so they're actually polygons themselves. See, I can click and select any of those. I moved something then, just then, accidentally. So if I grab that and I pulled it out, it's also going to affect everything around it because it's stuck to it. But that's actually the polygon face of the polygon that I've selected. So that's the polygon there. Okay. Now, I'm just going to put this guy aside for you so I can show you what the other thing's about. I'm in Polygon mode here. I'm just going to go into Editable Poly just so it's safe. It's not in the sub-menu, as we call it, right? And in the meantime, I'm going to make you a teapot. And I'm going to make the teapot, but I'll take away the lid to show you what I'm talking about. I'll take the spout away as well and the handle. So we just got this plain thing. So if I convert this, it also needs to be converted to before we can change anything. If I right click it and go to the quad menu, go right down to convert to, and I convert this to an editable poly as well, I now have the same things. I've got the sub menu of the vertices. So if I click on vertices, all the vertices that are blue, you see them all being selected. If I click on edges and I click on an edge, you can see I can select the edges of the polygons. If I click on the border, you'll see the border is like where there's nothing else there. Now this goes in a little bit, so if I click in there like that, that little edge right there is the border, okay? And why do we need to do that? Because you might want to do things. So once you're in these sub-menus, you can do some cool things. So I've just clicked on the edges here. So I'm in edge mode or border mode, and I can actually cap that really quickly like that, and it caps it. You see that? Okay, Control Z back to you. I've capped it basically with a polygon, round polygon through here. Okay, so that's what borders are for. Now, if I go back to this guy and I can't do much with that one, so what I'll do is I'll make another one. So I'll just go, I'm going to deselect the Editable Poly submenus by just clicking on Editable Poly up here. Okay. I'm going to go back into Create because I want to show you what elements are. So I'm going to get the teapot, and I'm just going to put a teapot. Oops, I want a teapot, but I want the spout, the handle, the spout, and the lid. We don't need the lid. I'll get rid of the lid. So if I convert this guy, convert him to an editable poly, there's your sub selection mode in here. And I can now, I'll show you what I'm trying to show you is elements. And what is elements? Elements are the larger sections that have been put together. And 3ds Max works it out for you, basically, even if it's something that you've made. So if you have a look, if I click on element, if I click on the spout, the handle, that's the handle bit, right? If I click on the spout, that's the spout. If I click on the body, that's the body. So that's what elements are. The polygons are still there, so I could click on one polygon, or I can select a whole heap of them. Yep, whatever I need to do, I can do that. So that's the sub menu for editable poly. Very important because editable poly is the one you use the most. What we were playing around with before was just shapes and geometry that you can stick together and do things. But in the real world, when you're making something up, you're going to do usually in editable poly. Okay, this is the editable poly sub selection mode, which means we go into the vertices, like I said, the edges if we need to. So if I did a selection over all of that, there's the edges in the red, there's the vertices in blue, and then you're also going to get your your borders and your polygons. If I select the whole lot, they're all polygons in the whole thing. Now, just for once you have an editable poly, it means you can do lots more things. So just to show you for a quick way of getting to these different elements, it's pretty simple. Where you've got you can go 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 are all the different sub-menus shortcuts on your keyboard. So 1 is your vertices, 2 is your edges, 3 is your borders, and 4 is your polygons. So they're the quick keyboard shortcuts to get to them. Okay, so that's a little bit about editable polys and what you can do with these guys. So let's just look into that for a little while, and then we'll go through some more tools. But if I just go into here to deselect everything in the mode here for editable poly, and I grab my selection tool, and I'll do one of these guys and get rid of that one. And I'm going to go back into here. I'm going to go up to File, Reset, don't save, yes, and it brings it back to here again. So let's have a look at editable poly in a little bit more depth. What I'd like you to do is make a box again. So let's make the box whatever size, it doesn't really matter. Let's make sure that we've got edged faces on as well so we can see. And I'll give it some segments as well. Let's do the good old 4 by 4 by 4. Okay, we'll go 5. Yeah, no, that's good. 5 and then 5. Okay. So, and look, for the purpose of the exercise, let's just make it all 50 units. I'll talk about units later on because they can be anything. You can change that too. 50, 50, and a 50. And we got this guy. All right. So, what do we need to make it into an editable poly? We need to right click to get to the quad menu, and we need to convert it to an editable poly. Okay. So now we've got it in there. So now we can get to the sub menu in here. And like I said, if you click in here, they tell you what these things are as well underneath here. You can use this. This here is called the Modifier Stack. So what it is that you might have an object that's been modified and there's certain things that have happened and it stacks up in that stack, almost like layers of what you've done to it, because there's all sorts of other things we can do besides just the modeling side of it. So let's have some play and see what we can do. Just as an example, what I'd like you to do, once it's converted to an editable poly, is just pick one of these polys, go into Polygon Mode, and which is 4 on your keyboard, and just pick one polygon in the center there somewhere. So because if I grab my move tool, my move and select tool, W, because at this stage they're all kind of stuck together, everything comes out with it, right? Everything comes out with it. We're going to start to do some extruding and stuff. And I'm going to go through the edit polygon parameters down here, which is underneath all of this. And if you have a look with your little hand, you'll see there's quite a lot of stuff underneath there, right? Lots of stuff underneath there. So again, you can make the 2, you can do this if you want to see everything by making the 2 like that, if you want to. What happens with that, of course, is that you lose some real estate in your viewport. So you get a little bit less room to look at your viewport. But I'm just going to go back to how it was set like that for now. And let's have a look what we can do. Right, so if I clicked on extrude. Okay, so I'm going into edit poly down the bottom here. If I click on extrude, right, and I hover over my thing, a little symbol comes out that shows you that it's extruding it out. Okay, so if I click on extrude down here, so you've got all these different things, and if I click my left mouse button and pull it, keep it down, I can extrude that polygon out like so. You see that? Have a go at trying to do that. Okay. And what happens is that when you've extruded something out that, now that's just using the tool extrude. If I Control Z back that extrude, okay, you see the little box beside the extrude, it's called settings. You guys see this one here, this little box here beside extrude? If you click on that, you get this little, we call it a caddy, as a little floating guy, right? And what that means is that I can say to it, instead of just doing it by sight, I can say extrude it out. You've got a number of different things here. You can do groups, right? You can do local normals or by polygon. So you have a different types of things that happen in here. And we will see that as we go along, what they do. But let's say I wanted to extrude it out 10. Mine's got 7.238 on it because that's probably what I extruded it out before. I'm going to put in 10 in there, and I'm going to hit the tick button down here because that's all I want to do. If I wanted to do 10 and then do it again, I'd hit the plus sign, but I'm just going to do the tick sign. Okay, so now that's extruded out 10 units. So what have I done by extruding out that poly? I've made more polys because I have now these guys here underneath and the side are more polygons, right? So I've got one here, I've got one there, I've got one underneath, I've got one there, and I got one over here, okay, that I can do stuff with. But for the purpose of the exercise, I want to grab this guy again. I'm going to hit that caddy again for extrude. And because I've already set it at 10, it knew to go out by 10. If I wanted to, if I'm happy with that, I'd just go tick, and I've extruded that out by 10. Everyone okay? Okay, so what else can we do with this? It seems a little bit boring at this stage. Not much is happening. We're just extruding a couple things out. But you can do so much more than that when you're building something. And we'll do some tutes in the future where you will make lots of really wonderful things. So I might have to get this, sorry. Yeah, so there's a lot more things you can do. So I've extruded that out there, double, and we've got all these different polys now. What's the next thing we can do? Just to show you what can happen is, and this is just a quick introduction to the bevel and extrude. The next one is bevel, right? So if I pick that polygon there, or any other polygon, right? I'm going to pick this guy here. I'm going down to the next thing called bevel. So what does bevel do? Well, bevel has got two different things it does, right? So if I hit the tool, excuse me, the bevel, okay, and I hover over the polygon, and if I click that and drag it up, it pushes out another poly. But then if I let go and drag up or down, you see what's going on? Okay, I can bevel it in and out there like so. So that's a bevel. All right. So with two movements, and bevel means extrude and then change the end to be smaller or bigger, basically. So it bevels it. That's okay. That's the bevel. Again, I'm going to Control Z back to there, and I'm going to use the caddy again. And if you have a look now, it's got two things here. It's got the extrude. It's got the extrude. It straight away extruded and beveled it out with what I had in before. And it's got the bevel, which is the other end here. So you can go out or you can go in or whatever. Okay, so I'm going to do it like that. I'm using the caddy. I'm going to hit the tick button. And now we've beveled it out. In this case, I've beveled it out. Bridge, we don't worry about right now. I'll show you about bridge at a different stage. It does something else. Inset's a very good one. This is how you make, say, for instance, a window, say, on a spaceship or on a house. So I'm going to go to Inset down here, and I'm going to just go straight to the caddy this time, which is the settings button. And you see what Inset did? It straight away inserted another, 1, 2, 3, 4 polys. So it's inserted those guys. And if I grab my little caddy here, you can see that I can make that bigger or smaller. And then that's the actual what it's done. It's made 1, 2, 3, 4 polys on the side. I'm just going to click that off for a second, and I'll show you again with the tool. So Inset, I hover over, and if I go like that, it makes 5 polys on the surface. So I can inset that like that. And if I wanted to say go to extrude, or extrude would be the good one to do. If I grabbed extrude, I could extrude that in, not too much in because then it's going a bit crazy. I can extrude that in, and now I've made a whole lot of new polys there. Yeah? So you see what's happened? So you can do that kind of stuff. Now, okay, it's not that full on about it. It's not such a great thing, but when you get further into this, you'll see how you can make characters and stuff by using these tools like this. The other thing is why I'm there is if you keep going down, it's got edit geometry, and we've got a whole heap of other stuff like attach and cut and quick slice and all this stuff. Without getting overwhelmed with anything, let's just have a look what cut does. Okay, I'm just going to put it over here like that. I'm going to hit this cut thing here. And what that does is that I can cut polys into it. So look at this. If you look at the tool, what happens is that the little tool changes shape if you go over a vertex, or if you go over an edge, or if you're over a polygon, right? So if I go over here and I click, say, let me say I click the edge here, you see what's happening? I can start to do this sort of stuff. I can cut it up into different shapes. And in this case, it has to have so many sides to be a polygon. Yeah? It can't be 2. It has to be at least 3 sides, 4 and 5 sides to get it to be a polygon. I'll show you what I mean in a second, but I can cut right through like this. I could cut a shape out. Let's have a look. Watch this. One shape there. I'll cut a shape here. It's nothing particular, but I'm going to cut like a little shape out of it like that. If I click back on the end here and I want to finish it off, so have a look up here with the tool. If I want to finish it off, I have to right click to stop it. Yeah? See what's going on here? So right click, it's gone away. So what I've done then is I've cut out a new shape and I can do stuff. So if I go into up here, if I go into Polygon again, I now have, and I turn off my cut tool. You have to turn them off, by the way. I have now new polygons. I've got one here, see? And then odd shapes. So what would happen if I deleted those? Oh, see-through. Right now, I can see into that box like that, and you can see the inside of the polygons inside, yeah? How do I cap that back up again? Remember what we did before? If we went into edge, right? If I went into edge, I can use edge to cap it as well. Or if I get right out of it and I go to, if I go to my element, so my border, okay, I'm out of Polygon mode. You could still work in Polygon. You'll see that that's all red, the edges. And then I can look, this is using this particular one. I can look down here and I can see there is edit borders. I can go cap and I've just filled it in and I made a new shape. Yep, you see that? So that's what can happen with, that's the sort of things you can do. And that's just a quick introduction to how that works. Okay, so without going into too much more detail, that is sort of like an introduction to editable poly, which is cool. So what I want to do right now is we're going to go through a few more tools. I'm not going to over confuse anybody too much because I have a couple exercises that we can do. We won't do them today, but next class we'll do them. So what I've got here now, I'm going to now do the same old thing. I'm not going to delete anything. I'm just going to reset. So I'm going to go reset up in my file, and I'm going to go don't save. And do you really? Yes. And it resets it. But it also resetted my edge faces that I want in here to see anything. So we've looked at the scale tool. We've looked at all the tools up here. We're now just going to briefly quickly show you something else. So I've got a box. I'm going to make a box. Again, we'll do the segments. It doesn't need to, but we're going to do 5 segments per side. I'm just making a quick box to start off again. All right. So let's have a look what we've got here. So we've got a box here. What the sort of things that we can do, first of all, I'm going to go into the quad menu and I'm going to convert this. Now this time I want to show you something. We'll look at these two down here, but what's an edible mesh and what's an edible poly? What's the difference? They're slightly different, edible meshes and polys, and I've just converted this to an edible mesh. Meshes aren't always used that much these days. I've seemed to find that edible polys seem to be the best way. They are very close to being the same thing. Except for when we're talking about polys, they're different to what this is. Well, I'll show you. It's got the vertices, they're the same. It's got the edges, they're the same. It's got the faces. Now faces, have a look what's going on. Because it's a mesh, it's actually got like triangular faces. Even though you can't see the edges of these meshes, they've got triangular faces. And basically, that's probably the big difference between the two of them. If I go into Polygon, it's clicking up the whole polygon. But if I go into face, it's getting this stuff going on. So that's really the big difference between the two. And we don't use the meshes as much. You'll probably find a lot of tutorials out there that use meshes for different reasons, which we're not going to go into. So I'm just going to go back up here and I'm going to reverse out of edible mesh by going up here. If it's going to do it, it's not going to do it for some reason. That's strange. Go into there. So what I'll do is I'm just going to delete that guy and I'm going to make another one, a box, and I'll explain to you a few other things too. There's my box. It's still got the same setting as I had before. I'm just making a box. When you're working on an object, you have so many different modifiers you wouldn't believe that you can do. When it's an edible poly, right, which this isn't an edible poly yet, I'll convert it to an edible poly. It allows you to get into another section as well, okay? If you look up here, this area here is called the modeling ribbon, And usually it's compacted down, this one up here, everyone, to modeling. And guess what? It's also replicating this, but it's got a bit more in it. If you have a look, if you put under modeling, in Polygon modeling, look what you got. You can use these two. You got vertices, edges, borders, polygons, etc. And you can do stuff with that. So what I'd like to show you is that, see that little arrow there? If I click that down, it brings up all this stuff, right? So it goes right into it. And you've got a whole heap different, you've got more tools than you have over here, because they've got things like swift loops and quick slice and cut, which is the one we used before. And then you've got paint, connect, you name it. It's got so many more stuff in there. Smoothing is another thing it has as well. And we can do a lot more. So this is in the modeling section. Remember, this will not appear if this is not an edible poly or an edible mesh. You will not get this stuff. Yeah? You can object paint, you can populate, you can freeform. Let's go. There's your modeling. There's some more tools. If I clicked on, say, a polygon, right? If I clicked on a polygon, let me just select it from here. You'll see even more tools up here. Okay? And it does all sorts of things. There's your extrude. Some people prefer just to use this instead of this create panel. I kind of have the tendency to do both, because this becomes really easy to select things and do stuff. But I'm not going to confuse you too much at this stage about all this. So what we do is, I just wanted to give you an example. So that's your modeling. So remember, you have to have an edible poly to be able to see all this. And you click the little button down here to open it all up. And we got the next one we got is freeform. Now freeform is very interesting, because freeform is sculpturing, basically. All right. So if I go to, I've got to remember, let's go just, so it's got all these different brushes. Remember I said brushes could mean tools like this, different brushes to do different things. We're not going into that. I'm going straight over to here where it says, look, it says relax, soften, flatten, pinch, spread, exaggerate, smudge. And believe it or not, there's a few other things like splines, shapes, branches. Let's just have a quick look at what we can do. I'm going to click that polygon so you can see it there. I'm going to grab the branches. So there's settings on that you can make high or lower. But for this stage, see, it's got offset settings there. If I grab that and pull this out like this, now it's rough and it's not how I would do it, but look what I'm doing. I grab another one over here. I'll go to another polygon and grab this one. Oops, go there. It don't want to work because it still thinks I'm working in this guy here. So I'll turn that off. Okay, so because sometimes you have to turn the buttons off to have it happen. If I go back to branches again and I pull out this, it looks really rough, but there's actually, you can make branches for trees or whatever that way. You got to do it fairly cleverly, because I've started off wrongly there, but I just wanted to show you there's a few different things there. If I want to use any of these guys, these ones in here, I've got push and pull. Okay, if I go push and pull and I go, well, let's just see what happens. If I go onto the surface of this, look what it's doing with my brush. See what I'm doing? It's pulling those all up. If I hold down Alt, just like in Photoshop, it should be the opposite. Yeah, and it is. It pushes it in. You see? Okay. So there's a few tools to, make things crazy. I just wanted to show you that. That's freeform. So have a little play with that. So you can see I've just made a really big mess there. So that doesn't really matter. I just wanted to show you that there's all these other tools in here. And the ones you'll be using the most, I mean, they've also got Object Paint and Populate. They're kind of cool, and we'll do a little tune on both of those at a later section. But if I go back into my modeling tab, there's all this stuff in here that we can use to model some, some things. So I'm just going to hit the editable poly again up here and get rid of this terrible shaped thing I have. And I'm going to put another shape in there again to show you something. It's going to be a good old square, sorry, not a sphere, a box again, which will be set like we had it before. I've got my box. So, because we're working in geometry right now, one more thing I'd like to show you. Guys, if you look up here, I've come back to a box again. It isn't an editable poly at this stage. It doesn't matter. I'll turn it into one just to make it so we're going back to that area again. We have a box and it's called Box 01. You see up here? It's got the name and it's got a representative color of blue. That's not actually a surface, or it's not actually material. It's just a representation of the color of a color, right? How do you name this of something else? It's pretty simple. You can see also in here in your select display area, it says Box 01, and it's got Box 01 and a little blue box beside it. So if we call this, okay, let's call it my box, okay, and I hit enter to make it happen if you want to. It's now called my box over here. It's also represented as in a blue color. If you hit that little box, you get an object selection color box selection, and you can change it to whatever color you want. So if I wanted to go like an orange, I've got orange, and now it's orange. Okay, cool. So that's how you name things and stuff like that, and change the representative color of it. So it doesn't have to be an editable poly to show you what I'm about to show you now, but I want to show you what modifiers and what they can do, just to show you how it works. So here's the box. I'm in the Modifier panel already because I've edited it to an editable poly. If I go into this thing called the Modifier List, just underneath my box there, look what I've got. That's a lot. Let's try one. Okay, one of the ones that people usually would use is a thing called Mesh Smooth or Turbo Smooth. Now to find this, as you can see, there's a lot of stuff in there, right? To find these things, you need to hit T on the, I'm looking for Turbo Smooth it's called. So if I hit T, it takes me to the T's and I can see Turbo Smooth. Click on that. Now what's happened? It's all smoothed up, hasn't it, right? Now look at your stack. Your stack was an editable poly. It goes upwards as you build it, right? So it was first an editable poly. It was first actually the box. Then it became an editable poly. Then we put Turbo Smooth on it, and it smoothed it. Okay. Now, if we wanted to make it a little bit more smoother, it's got. If you look in the properties of the Turbo Smooth, it's got this iterations here. And if I hit the second, if I put 2 in there, look what's going on. 2 smoothed it again. 3 has smoothed it again. Now, if I keep going up like that, it will probably crash. Okay, so I'm just going to right click that back. Yeah, so that's right. Don't do too much because it could probably crash. And that's cool. We've learnt how we can smooth off the edges, and now it does look like a bit of a suitcase. You put a handle along there, or a couple of those things to push the trolley around, it becomes a suitcase. So there's a lot more in there. What else have we got in our modifier list? We've got all sorts of bends. We've got this. What else? Let's have a quick look. Some of these things you'll learn about later on. We've got all sorts of strange things. So, for instance, this thing here called FFD 3s and 2s, if I hit that guy, it gives me a little cage around it. And I can actually come in here and select these cages. Okay. And I can actually change. Hang on, I've got to go into it. You see that little thing opened up to there. So it's an edible poly. I've put a turbo smooth on it. And now I've got lattice and control points by opening up that little triangle. If I have to grab hold of the control points, it lets me select them. And what's going on now? I can change the shape of it by using my sort of cage around it. Yeah? You see the cages? I can come in here, can grab one, pull it out, and I can get sort of any shape. It's called FFD. Let me show you. See here in the Fs, you can have one that's got 3 handles on it. You can have one with 4 handles on it. You can have one with 2 handles on it. You can do all sorts of stuff. But, you know, I just wanted to show you that for now. I'm going back up to my FFD, and I'm actually going to delete that. So I'm just going to select it and hit. I can drag it into there. I think I can, and drag it into there. I could just hit the button like that, and it works okay. Let me go back to normal so you can see what's going on. We've got other things in there in the modifier list, so many of them. Let's say we wanted to, now we can also do animations using these things. There's one called melt, for instance. And let's try that. Let's see if I can find the melt modifier for you. Okay, so I've got the melt modifier and the amount that I want it to melt. Watch this. I'm not going to do anything else but just watch it. Getting my little arrow here, look. Okay, so I can melt it. Now it melts differently too. That's like ice. If I said it was jelly, I can melt this one in a different way. See, like a jelly would melt. Yeah. Glass. Well, you need a high temperature, but it will melt. Glass melts like this, apparently. It's like that point stays there. I don't know if that helps. Just shatters. Oh, okay. Wow. So if you look here, oh no, we can record this. I won't do that yet. That's okay. I can record this to. So you could. One of the things you're going to make is a snowman first off, and we're going to melt it afterwards. Yeah. So what I'm trying to show you is there's so many of these guys, so many of these things. Let's just click that off for a second. And I'll go back to my modifier panel. What else is a good one to show you for now? Well, you got things like chamfer and all that as well. There's all sorts of modifiers that you use for animation, like cloth modifier. But in this case, let's just use a bend modifier. Okay, so here it is here. All right, I look in my properties. I bring open my little arrow here, so it shows Gizmo and center, which means I can use some stuff. I can put a Gizmo and bend a certain area, but just for the just see what it can do. Go to angle. Let's put in an angle of say 45, and direction. So now with that angle 45, look what it's done. Okay, so it's done that. Now direction will change the way. See, it might go that way, And now we've got a talking SpongeBob, or a moving SpongeBob type of thing. A dancing SpongeBob. There we go. There we go. See? Now, all that, what I'm doing right now, can be animated. That's simple. Okay? And you won't see any of that stuff. So this is what I'm trying to show you is that, you know, it's got so many more things in there. I'll go back to the modifier list. Was there anything else I could show you that will look all right for the moment? Look, there is so much stuff. There's smooth, there's UV mapping. We'll talk about that another day. Pro Optimizer. Some of these things you probably will use. Noise is a good one for animation. And all sorts of stuff in there. So there's just an introduction to the modifier list just to show you how much stuff's in there. So a quick rundown on what can be done with our tools. So I'm going to quickly, I still need to go through this stuff with you, but I'm going to quickly go through the tools. So backwards and forwards in undo and redo, I'm pretty well sure you know about that one. This is where you can select and link things together. So let's say you have a train with a whole heap of carriages. You could select and link the carriages to the train to follow it on a track. Yeah. The next one is called bind to space. I'm going to briefly go through all this. Bind to space. The next one here called select object. That's the same as your select and move without the move bit. Okay. So if you go select object and I click on this guy, I've selected it, but I can't move it. I haven't got the move tool. That's the select and move. Select object. The next one is select by name, and that brings what we got over here on your left-hand side. It brings a floating one just the same as that, and it says my box is in there, and I can select it and I can turn it on and off if I want to, so you can't see it. So that's just select there. The selection, rectangular selection, or the selection area, this guy here, if you hit the little arrow in the corner, you have different types of selection. So let's say I wanted to just select with the spray can. All right, I've got the spray can on. I'll go into my editable poly so we can look at the vertices, right? So I can use the spray can to select. You see this? Look, I can use the spray can. That's the spray can selection. So I can select things with that spray can up there. Yep. No, it does go through to the other side, and I bet you any money. That's a very good question. It has. See? So you can stop that. And it's really simple. I just have to remember where it is to stop the other side. I'll just stop this for a second. Okay, so again, we're going through these tools again. So we've got the different selection tools here. This Windows crossing one, it tells you what it's about. It's kind of weird. It should be just set like normal default. So I would ignore that one for now. I will jump across some of these tools until you see this thing called angle snap. So you use percentage snap and angle snap when you're doing an angle or something and you want it to snap to a particular angle, you use that. If you want it to snap percentage of an angle, so if you were turning something around 360, you can make the percentage of that snap to. And the best way to see that is to actually do it. This one over here is selection sets. So you might have, say, 300 different objects in here, and you could select 10 of those objects. Say that might make up a particular thing, and you can put them in here as a set. So then it's really easy for you to go in there and use this set. Select the head, and it will select that for you. So that's like a setting for that. The mirror tool is interesting. So if we made a copy and it's at the X, so you got to think about the X, Y, and Z stuff. But if I did the copy and I went like this, okay, it's mirroring it from different angles. So that's from the X angle, that's from a Y angle, and the Z will be down the bottom, but it needs a more of an offset because of the shape of the guy. Okay, so that's what the mirror tool does for you really quickly. Alignment tool is kind of important because we do a good couple exercises on that, and that's kind of important. You'll see why in a little while. The Scene Explorer is a little bit like this thing over here. We don't need to worry about that too much. The layers one we won't worry about right this moment. The curve editor, that's something that we use in animation. And a few other things, but animation's the main thing, and it's curves in here. So it might be a ball bouncing, so the ball might have a curve going bang, bang, or like that. And there's ways of making them work really well and animate properly. But the most important one as we're moving along here is this guy. This guy is called the Material Editor. So I'm going to introduce you to this tool set called the Material Editor. The shortcut for the Material Editor, and this is one that you were using all the time, is M. Okay? And it opens up this guy. And there's a whole heap of different materials in here that we can put onto this box. And this is a lesson all in its own, how we make materials up. If I wanted to make a quick, I don't know how it's all working, a material, I'm going to not tell you how to do it yet, but I wanted to show you that I can make materials up pretty close, pretty quick. So I'm going to just do, I won't do glass, I'll just do polished aluminium. And I'll drop that material onto my thing here. So I've got these selected. I've just put some aluminium onto this, my new suitcase here. So this is the material editor, and we're going to learn about how this works. It's got 3 sections. You've got all these different, it's not happy about something. We've got all these different kinds of materials that we can put on and sort of sets of materials we can put on. Okay, and this is what makes your model look great. This makes it look real. This is the thing that makes the difference to your model. It wasn't happy with what I just did there. I can see all the yellow lines in that. So the material editor is there. M's the shortcut. The next one is your render, right? So there's render setup, there's render from frame, and there's render production. I'm going to use this one here with the lightning bolt really quickly. And you see what it's doing? Look what it's doing. Okay? That's that easy. Now, it doesn't look great because there's not very much lighting in there. See, it's got a bit of lighting because there's 2 lights in there that are default. If I render it again, okay, it's using, I think, Arnold Renderer, which is pretty up there. I can actually go and render that out, and it could be a movie that take forever, but I can actually go in here and save my render, right? And I can save my image as whatever format. It could be JPEG, whatever, and I can save that image and call it something in there. So I'm just giving you a rundown for now. We have to do full-on lessons with materials. And that is what we'll do today. I think we've done a fair bit. So thank you guys, and we'll follow on and we'll do some more stuff later on. But we certainly have learnt a lot from today's episode, or day's class. So I will talk to you in next week. Ciao.